Okay, great. We'll get started. Hi, Zahra. I'm so glad to be with you today, and really excited to get to do this interview with you. Thanks for being here with CAIR Stories, the new CAIR blog.
Thank you for having me, Emily.
So, and I'm Emily Galpern. I'm a volunteer with CAIR, and just wanted to start off by asking you, how did you find your start as an activist?
Well, okay, so just a little background on it. So when I was younger, when I was really young, I genuinely thought that activism was speaking up for those who did not have a voice, who weren't able to speak up, who didn't have the opportunity to. And after a lot of years of learning and unlearning, I realized that that's not necessarily the case with activism. It's more making space for people to have the opportunity to speak up and not speaking over them or for them. And so I wanted to start off with that because it took a while for me to fully understand the concept of activism and advocacy and how I represent myself in that sphere. And so I think what really started it, for one, is as a Shia Muslim woman, I have a unique perspective on the words of injustice and oppression. And so something that us Shia Muslims have is it's Muharram, it's the month of Muharram, and it's basically a commemoration of the grandson of the Prophet. And so this commemoration takes place because Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, the grandson of the Prophet, risked everything because of a lot of oppression and injustice that was happening during his time. And so this story that I'm kind of running through right now is something that I've been told my entire life. It's something that I learn every Muharram, every single year since I was super young, and I've known this story my entire life. And so I think that unfair treatment or injustice or oppression that's happening that I see on the news or I see within my school or anything that I feel like I have a unique perspective in that sense because I've always grown up with understanding oppression and injustice and how that is fought through. So I think that perspective has really brought me into the current present day activism. And just to give an example of some of the work is just most recently with the election that's happening, I've done a lot of advocacy with California propositions, and I've noticed that, with this advocacy, I need to fully understand the depth of what each proposition is and how it's directly affecting people. So instead of reading it on Ballotpedia and trying to consume all of that information, I realized that just going out to the communities and talking to them and understanding what they're going through and how this will directly affect them is the most important thing to me. So whether it was rent control or it was about cash bail, I wanted to make it a point to go and talk to these communities and make sure that I am not saying, oh, this is what you need and this is what I will provide. I'm saying, let's have a conversation about it, break it down and see what we can do together. And I think that's a really important part of activism because even if you're trying to do something, if whether you're affecting one person or 100 people, it's still helping people in the end and you're still spreading a message of kindness and fighting against oppression and injustice. And I think that's the most important part of activism and how I kind of started going about it. Yeah.
It seems like I love what ties both of those things together. It seems like both in terms of what you realized about being an activist and doing advocacy, and then also around the election, were both about supporting people to find their own voice. Mm-hmm. That, both of those things, like you wanted to hear directly from people how they're impacted or what they think about the propositions. And also that being an advocate is not speaking for other people who haven't been heard, but creating a space for them to speak and not having been heard.
Definitely, yes.
And what about you? And what places have you not been heard that you wanted to make your voice heard?
Oh gosh, I mean, as a Muslim woman, I can kind of speak on this quite often, but I think because of the perspective I have as not only a Muslim woman, but as a Muslim woman who is trying to pursue politics and in that spectrum and studying it, it's very often that I'm claimed as the underdog or someone that, oh, your opinion can happen. Like it can be said later. That's okay. It's not really important right now. And, I realized through the years that maybe I shouldn't say something, maybe I should. It was a lot of self-doubt that was instilled in me because of the people around me and what I was surrounded with. And through that, I realized, the only person that's going to stand up for me and help me bring out my voice is myself. And it's something that I had to find internally and work on myself. And through there, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to make my space and I will demand the talking because no one's going to give it to me. So I think that's really important. And even with allies and people that are like non-Muslim, that are not women, if they're helping you provide that space for yourself, and if they have a certain privilege that you don't, and they can help you get there, then I think that's also really important as individuals.
It's just so great to hear your thoughts, because I just wanted to say in the middle of it when you're talking, it's like, you go, it's just like a very powerful stance that you're taking, and very courageous in the midst of kind of what you were saying, that's not the environment that you were in and not being heard. So it takes a lot to take that stand and make your voice heard in the midst of a situation like that. So I think it's very courageous. Well, one of the things that you had said earlier was that you created the Ahlul-Bayt Collective, and I wanted to know what inspired you to create it and what are the goals of the collective?
Okay, so there's two different factors that kind of inspired me to create the collective. One was that there was no mainstream platform that was for Shia Muslims by Shia Muslims. And so as a minority sect within Islam, it's definitely very hard to find representation. I mean, there's so many instances where so many different types of people struggle with representation within, communities in this society, but also a unique perspective in that is that it's difficult for us to find representation within our Muslim sphere. And so through that, and also I actually took a trip to Boston earlier this year in February when the pandemic was not happening. And I went to this gorgeous museum where they had beautiful Islamic art there. And I noticed that, I don't know if this was done by the museum, I don't know if this was done by an individual who was in the museum, but a lot of prominent Shia history and Shia names were marked off or not included with pieces or next to those pieces and stuff. And so I knew that not only are we misrepresented in so many different platforms, but one of them was art and creativity, and something that's so revolutionary through history is art and how that's portrayed, and how like history passed down is through art. And that inevitably made me started thinking about all of this and how I need to make a space for people to share their art and dissuade the narrative against Muslims in general and Shia Muslims. And so my goal is to keep building this safe space, and especially for minorities like myself, it was very difficult to to get representation and to express ourselves in our struggles. I think that was, the factors that made me want to start this. And, what I hope to see out of it is if there's at least one person that is taking something away from it, whether you're Muslim or not, and you stumble upon like an informational post, or you see a piece of artwork that's really captivating to you, if there's something that touches you and makes you want to learn more, educate yourself, or ask more questions, then I feel like my job has done something. I think that all of this hard work has made someone feel something, and that's what I want, even if it's just simply one person. And we've done that, which is so incredible. I hear stories from Pakistan to France about Muslims and what they're facing, and the international community in which we're in. And it's so unique to hear that a lot of different people from so many different places have very similar experiences to what I have, and that we're not so different in the end. So I think that is what I wanted to create, and that's what I hope inshallah will come and happen with more attraction towards the website and all of that. Yeah.
Can you say a little more about like what does it actually look like? And if you're going to say what exactly is the collective and what it does?
Yeah, so the collective is basically an online platform for Shia Muslims and allies to come and submit their work and have it published on the website. Most recently, we're actually working on a magazine, a whole publication that has a spread from very prominent Shia Muslim authors to people who are at the local level. And so, for Shia Muslims that are creatives, that, it's not a very strong area in which we're in, Muslims in general, for some part, is the artistic industry and all of that. And so I wanted to make that space for them. And if there's a Shia Muslim or allies that are pursuing that but don't really know how to build their platforms up, build their LinkedIn's up and all of that, then this is a space where you can say that, hey, I'm published on this website. I've written an op-ed on this website. I've done this. So it really just builds a community of people. And most recently, we've actually started a book club where we are going into very deep discussions about society and capitalism and all these really interesting topics. So I just think that if I'm putting in a simplistic term, it's a community of different people from different backgrounds that we can just all come together.
I can't wait to see it. I know that you were involved with youth programming with CAIR, and how was that part of your story? Was there any part of that inspired what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I did the youth program with CARE in my senior year of high school. So right before my senior year, I believe. And so normally with your senior year, that's kind of the time where your family and friends are like, oh, so you have the rest of your life figured out. You know where you want to go to college, you know what you want to pursue. And for me specifically, I was just, and maybe a lot of people can kind of resonate with this, is I kind of did not know what I wanted to do. I was like, yes, I want to pursue politics, but in what capacity? How would I do that? How would I approach it? Am I even smart enough to analyze these things? You know, it was kind of a lot of confusion and self doubt. And so when I went to the youth program for CARE, my friend made me apply, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to get in. And I got in, and through that, I had the opportunity to run for president. I got to debate on topics and, you know, see some vital politics and everything like that. And so through those experiences, I figured that making policy is not as easy as I assumed. And there's a lot of steps that go into it, but it's
Mm.
so beneficial to people and communities around you. And just one instance was we were all arguing a case. And so for me, one of the cases was Indigenous rights land. I remember something like that. And I was thinking to myself, I was reading the content for it, that this absolutely has nothing to do with me. You know, Indigenous rights may not have a direct correlation to me, but I have such a strong passion for these people. And that if I had the privilege to be in that space and make those demands that they deserve this, then I need to utilize it. And I need to make that work and happen. So through that, I think that was one of the experiences that really had me like, I think I need to do policy work. I think I need to really do politics, and it's something that I know I need to pursue. And although it was extremely difficult to tell my South Asian household how I was going to approach that, because they were like, well, what do you do in politics? Like, are you going to be on the TV? Like, are you going to run for president? So it's quite interesting to try to explain, you know, going into the political sphere, what that means. But inevitably, I got a huge support system, and they really were happy that I did the CARE program. And I think that if anyone has the opportunity, excuse me, if anyone has the opportunity to do this program or anything similar of it, especially if it's leadership type programs, please do it, because it is so, so beneficial and can really open your eyes and your perspective on a lot of different things for sure.
Wow, that's great. That's great to hear about how that was for you. So you said that was when you were a senior in high school. Where are you now? Where are you, in your life, or what you're involved with at the moment?
Yes. Okay. So I am in my junior year, my third year of college, undergraduate. And so I'm going to UC Davis. I'm studying political science and human rights, which inevitably I went through with. If there's one thing that I was very sure going through my 3 years of college, was that I knew I wanted to pursue politics. So it was really nice that I had the privilege to know what I wanted to do. And so, yeah, that's what I'm currently studying. And I've really been currently getting into a lot of, because I'm home and in San Jose area, I've really been into researching grassroots organizations and what they do and how they directly help the communities, because I found that doing things at the local level is something so important, especially as of right now with elections. And I've found myself wanting to volunteer more frequently, do hot meal runs. And my friend and I are actually attempting to set up a community fridge somewhere in the area where we can, have it set up there. And I know it's quite difficult, but hopefully we figure it out. Community fridge where we can set it up in the area, have food there, have anyone in those, low income, marginalized areas to take food whenever they please, and maybe set up a system where we can have people send food out there. So yeah, that's kind of what we've been doing, or I've been doing recently. And I feel like this time, um, especially being home quite often, I've done a lot of reading and a lot of research and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm going through right now.
That's great to hear what you're up to these days. In addition to the collective, well, you talked about this a little bit, so I'm not sure if you have more to say about it, but as a Muslim woman, what have been your struggles to be taken seriously, and what are some successes in that area for you?
So I can talk a little bit about some of the challenges I've had in the collective, since I've already kind of talked about the political sphere. But I actually had quite a lot of challenges with the collective when it came to the people that I wanted to connect with and build with. So a lot of people who are running organizations that are similar in the Shia Muslim sphere are all men. And so a lot of these men, when I spoke to them, asked them for advice, they were quite unsure if I would be successful in what I was trying to do. And they were very doubtful of, which comes to no surprise, I'm kind of used to that, but they were quite doubtful about my message and how I wanted to spread it and everything. And so it definitely took a lot of courage to get out of my comfort zone. I mean, especially doing something that has not really been done before, at least to my knowledge in the US. And, taking my perspective of creative representation and being the only woman, it's very difficult because there are two things that are very underrepresented, right? So it was definitely difficult. And these men who run the similar organizations and businesses and who reach the same audience as me did not think that I was capable of doing what I'm currently doing. So I think the biggest piece of advice when you're going through that is having a big and strong support system and surrounding yourself with people who are very supportive and kind. And so thankfully my family and my friends have been the biggest support system. I mean, when there's men in my DMs that are like, you can't do anything, this sucks, like why are you doing this, what purpose are you trying to fulfill, instead of going back and arguing back and forth with them, even though I have a strong intention to do so, it's always my friends and family that are like, "Take a second, do what you need to do, focus on yourself, and you will prove them wrong." And so far, it's worked out for me. So yeah.
Wow. It's I just keep thinking throughout the interview that you have a lot of courage and have stood on, your confidence, or have developed that confidence. You said you felt some self-doubt, and having community seems so important. So it's so great that you have that and have built that for yourself as well. Well, in what ways do you hope to see the Muslim community or conditions for Muslims in the US move forward in 2021?
Okay, so when I read this question, I had to think super deeply about this one because I feel like there's so much to say on it. But just to kind of break down a few points of the question, it's unfortunate that I see the Muslim community now, and I feel like it has been very divided. And I had the opportunity to work on a research project this summer about analyzing anti-Islamic rhetoric and what other sects are going through and the type of hate that they receive. And so it made me reflect a lot and see that a lot of the hate that Shia Muslims get is actually from other sects within Islam. And so it made me reflect, and it made me realize that if there is a non-Muslim speaking Islamophobic rhetoric or Shiaphobic rhetoric or whatever it is, they're speaking against Muslims, it genuinely does not matter if you're Sunni or you're Shia or you're anything other in those sects, because they look at you as an enemy, they look at you as a threat. And so realizing that, I've known that like these petty arguments that I see, or a lot of this, rude rhetoric that's happening in the society that we're in, it doesn't matter as much, it doesn't have much of an impact. And so these sectarian issues that I see so often, with the Shiophobia and all this stuff, it genuinely needs to stop. For one, if there's one, I don't know how to approach that, but if there's one piece of advice I can give, it to please stop that. And everyone needs to really educate themselves on harm reduction and the targeting and that happens in the communities. And I mean, even starting the collective, I was called some pretty nasty names by many Muslims. And through that, I knew that me demanding a safe space for Shia Muslims is causing so many issues, and it's the bare minimum, and I'm being scrutinized for it. And so it's just a lot of things to come to term to, and I still see it evidently every single day. And so I remind myself that the conditions in the US are not as bad as the conditions abroad. So I try to remind myself of that. And I know that I struggle with a few things that comes from different sectarian issues, but I understand that maybe instead of complaining about the representation that I don't have, that I need to start representing myself and making those space for myself and the people around me, because no one's going to be there doing it for you, which I kind of mentioned before. And I just think one thing that I hope that everyone, takes away from it is that we should treat each other with the same kindness and respect that Islam shows us. And that no matter who you are, what background you come from, that you are always welcomed in the spaces and you're safe and you're loved. And that's all I can really hope for.
I love that. I think that's the second time you mentioned kindness. You said it at the beginning and now at the end. And so,
I just think it's such a simple thing that everyone should have.
yeah.
And just, you don't know anyone's story really, so you might as well treat them with the kindness you can.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to say, that you wanted to share that we haven't talked about?
So I know earlier you mentioned about biggest influences in your life. There was a question about the bit, so I wanted to kind of touch on it a little bit. And so
Great.
It made me think a lot about like a specific person who has the biggest influence in my life, who that might be. And although there's so many influences within my family and friend groups, I wanted to go even broader, and I wanted to actually say that my biggest influence as of right now is a community, and I think that's the Black community. I think it's really cool and really amazing at what we've seen this summer and continuously about the revolutionary rhetoric that they make, and that just educating myself and learning and unlearning a lot of different things, that they deserve so much more credit than what is given, and they've really paved the way for a lot of things. I mean, I've read a lot of books between Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, that one of the biggest revolutionary concepts that happened, and abolition and all this stuff, came from Black Muslims and Black feminists and all these people, and it's very intersectional and kind of a melting pot of so many different cultures and all. And so I really look at that and I thank them for everything they've done, and they've really paved the way and given me the motivation to step out of my comfort zone and be very outspoken about what I need to. So yeah, that's what I wanted to mention, the big influence one for sure.
No, that's really important. I think that's so great to get to include here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, great.
For having me and for interviewing me. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. I've loved learning about you and your life and what you're doing and kind of how you got here. It's been so great.